Red Hill grounding. In the backdoor nature corridor, the hillsides nurture pinto and dappled trunks that stand like creatures on hind legs, as if in suspended animation, to form arched chapels to life, symbols of the greener heritage of eucalypt, she-oak and tea tree, growing to shepherd the rabble of rosellas, shy pardelopes and warblers, a blend of grey kangaroos, to welcome, calm and patiently remind of the forest spirit and dignity under the threat and care of human nature. Nature note, a window to the past. Yellow box red gum woodland once covered 25,000 square kilometres, stretching from Melbourne to southern Queensland. Growing on rich soils, usually low in the landscape, it was heavily grazed by stock and extensively cleared for agriculture. Tellingly, the names of the trees reflect the colour that they are as firewood. Today, only 5% of the former extent of this woodland type remains, and most of what is left exists in small, fragmented patches, less than 1/20th of a square kilometre. It is listed nationally as a critically endangered vegetation community. Over 2.5 square kilometres of yellow box red gum woodland is conserved on Red Hill, and this is one of the largest remaining patches anywhere. With over 200 native plant species, Red Hill retains more than double the number of plant species usually observed in other woodland remnants. Red Hill is one of the few places left in temperate Australia where one can walk in woodland similar to that experienced by Aboriginal people prior to European arrival. The hill is part of an important nature corridor extending from the coast through Red Hill to further inland. Ownership. The eastern grey hops over the taut wire. Smaller kangaroos squeeze through holes at the base of the fence to reach the grass growing long between houses and the track. There growth is greener and council cut, more lush than the hard crop stubble on the hill in the reserve. The grazers ignore a walker in the twilight, except for a joey that skips nervously at the edge of the group. White cockatoos wheel and screech, then perch at the top of a bare dead tree. Inside her fortress, the homeowner clatters her family's dinner to the table. She sees the mob as visitors, not owners for thousands of summers. Nature note, skyrocketing roos. A female eastern grey kangaroo has a remarkable capacity to raise young in a variable climate. She may have 3 young at different ages, an embryo in suspended development, a pouch young and a young at foot. The latter 2 will be sucking milk of different composition from different teats. On Red Hill, around 80% of all females raise 1 young to independence each year. Females begin to breed at 2 years old and then for 5 to 6 years. It is not surprising that Red Hill's roo numbers are rising. In 2010, Red Hill and the adjacent golf course sustained 460 roos. By 2012, this number had nearly doubled to 880. Mainly a grass eater, the eastern grey kangaroo congregates in Red Hill's open, more disturbed areas, away from key areas of plant diversity. Nevertheless, The high growth in roo numbers can't be sustained without damage to the hill's other wildlife. Within the flock. The thin track makes a maze blocked by tea tree and shea growing undisciplined inside the framework of gums. Late winter wind bites while I pick my way quietly. There is a sharp note from the thicket. Then, like an unseen wave breaking down the hill, calls erupt from the mixed flock. A yellow-tailed thornbill flashes past. Blue wrens bob and hop in a scattered troop. Speckled warblers and heath wrens toss leaf litter, while a brown-winged shrike thrush stands sentry on a thick angled branch above. Nearby, a scarlet robin briefly watches me, the lumbering mammal, in their midst. Nature note. One of the delights of a winter's walk on Red Hill is to be suddenly overtaken by a mixed flock of 10 to 30 small woodland birds. The mixed flocks rarely consist of less than 4 species as they move across Red Hill and nearby suburbs. Mixed flocks enable the birds to travel further than they would when defending territories. There are also many eyes watching for predators, and birds are not searching for scarce food in an area where other birds have just been. The yellow-rumped thornbill, with its white-spotted police headband hat and bright yellow rump, is ubiquitous. Other common Red Hill mixed flock birds are the tail-wagging grey fantail and the silver eye, which has silver spectacles and a sober olive suit. Rarer members of the flocks are the speckled warbler, which tends to forage on the ground and has heavy dark splotches all over. Striated thornbill, a foliage forager with a heavily streaked breast and forehead. The jewel-like spotted partelope, feeding in the eucalypt canopy, has a stub tail and black crown, wing and tail, all with rows of white spots. Golden whistler, a plumpish bird. The male has striking golden yellow underparts and black head. The female and juveniles are grey-brown. Grey shrike thrush, a grey bird with olive-brown back and full dark eye. And scarlet robin. The male has a jet-black head and throat and scarlet breast. The female has pale scarlet wash on her breast. Stone knife on Red Hill. There is movement all the time on the hill. In daylight hours, wrens flit, galahs search the hollows, kangaroos spirit between tea tree and eucalypt. Through moon-washed still nights under Ngunnawal stars or cloud, boobooks hoot, frogmouths drift, possums scurry and hiss high springtime. Father carries his child on his shoulders today. Mother follows with a spare warm jumper. A cyclist strains along the rough track, speaks, head turned in passing. Now on the hard ground of the ancient mound, I find the forgotten stone knife left on the earth-given kitchen bench when the clan moved onward. Nature note. Why a Red Hill? Red Hill began life 425 million years ago as a series of mud, silt and sand sediments at the bottom of the shallow sea. These sediments hardened to form sedimentary rocks of the Yarralumla Formation. This formation can be seen near playing fields near the Deacon shops. About 400 million years ago, a crack in the Earth's mantle allowed partially molten rocks to intrude close to the surface, baking and hardening the sedimentary layers in the vicinity of Red Hill in the metamorphic hornfill rocks. Hornfills are much more resistant to weathering than surrounding sedimentary rocks. Over millions of years, the softer rocks have eroded into broad valleys and plains, leaving the resistant Red Hill Ridge. The name Red Hill probably comes from the red soils found in the area by the early European settlers. The red colouring comes mostly from iron oxide weathered out of the hornfills. The return. Eagles appeared suddenly on the hill. Yesterday, flying still in the wind. Two sets of black wings held fingers spread, like on an ancient shield. Today they perch on strong talons, crooked beaks, taunted by miniature magpies. Decades back on a family trip we saw eagles strung dead, wingtip to wingtip on miles of barbed fences. Sheep grazed the dry grass behind. Executions for crimes against rural livelihood were later eclipsed by DDT. For years a reclusive pair of survivors has worked the roads from Mugger Ridge to the south. Each year they send their young to fly, until this season, with good rains for growth and food for extra chicks, returns wedge-taileds to Red Hill. Nature note: Red Hills regeneration. It's a delight when something as big as a wedge-tailed eagle returns to the hill. The recent appearance of a batch of blotched hyacinth orchid is equally spectacular. Were its minute seeds carried by the wind from the nearest population several kilometres away? Red Hill has had a transformation over the last 20 years through the assistance of Red Hill regenerators, volunteers from the surrounding suburbs, and Parks and Conservation Service staff. Stock grazed Red Hill until 1995 and left a legacy of weeds. At stock removal, 53% of Red Hill was choked with weeds, and thistle fields and prickly woody weeds restricted recreational use. Tens of thousands of hours have been spent removing weeds, enhancing local plant populations and bringing Red Hill back to something of its former glory. Weeds now dominate less than 13% of the hill, and most of the rare species have at least doubled their population, like the button wrinklewort, whose population has increased from 1,500 to 5,500 plants. Red Hill is still missing some major elements. For example, it does not have the orchid and lily diversity found in ungrazed woodland, while, like most of the region, its woodland bird abundance and diversity is in decline. The weeding, planting and feral animal control aims to reverse the decline and restore missing elements. The wedge-tailed eagle and hyacinth orchid are glimpses of success.